to Weekly Report on Climate Change News. I'm your anchor, Irene Zielinski. Last Wednesday, the touristy Italian city was affected by the worst flood in the last 50 years because of the rise in sea level. The water invaded the entire city, causing great losses, the death of a person, and damage to works of art. The increase in level was not expected to be as high, and now the authorities are worried about snowfall in the surrounding mountains, which could cause an even greater increase of the sea level. Researchers studying fish nurseries off the coast of Hawaii counted over 10,000 pieces of plastic during a 5-minute tow in clear water, exposing how serious the plastic epidemic really is. These layers of calm water near the ocean surface, known as coastal slicks, provide a safe place for larval fish to hatch and grow before returning to their habitat. However, scientists examining some of these ocean slicks were alarmed to find that many of the larval fish are ingesting plastic at their most vulnerable stages of growth, in the form of prey-sized microplastics. The importance of mangrove forests in protecting the coastlines from natural hazards became evident again when the Sundarbans reduced the speed of Cyclone Bulbul by 20 kilometers an hour to save the rest of southern Bengal from the calamity. As the cyclone moved parallel to the coast, the mangrove forest impeded the speed of the wind, thus mitigating the damage to life and property. With sea level rising as an effect of climate change, there is a need for viewing the issue of protecting the Sundarbans from a global perspective. Some areas of the UK received a month's worth of rains in one day, leaving many parts deluged. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has warned of even more flooding in the future owing to climate change. 6 severe warnings were issued around Yorkshire and the Midlands, and a major incident declared in South Yorkshire. Boris Johnson stated that huge investments have been going into flood defenses and flood preparation. However, some areas are prone to flooding and they require greater investment in flood defenses. New Zealand has passed a zero-carbon bill and pledged to become carbon neutral by 2050. The Prime Minister expressed her concern over the climate emergency the world is in and called for a need to act. In addition to net zero carbon emissions, the new bill pledges to reduce methane emissions by 1.25% by 2050, plant 1 billion trees over 10 years, and draw electricity entirely from renewable energy by 2035. Alongside the new bill, New Zealand also aspires to fulfill its obligations of keeping rising global temperature under check under the 2015 Paris Agreement. The most destructive hurricanes are 3 times more frequent than they were a century ago, new research has found, and this can be unequivocally linked to climate crisis. The research, published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, used a new method to calculate hurricane damage that makes it easier to separate climate effects from increases in wealth and population density. Using this method, the researchers at the University of Copenhagen determined that the frequency of the most destructive hurricanes had increased by 330% this century. The Tongass is the world's largest remaining intact temperate found in Alaska and is inhabited by many indigenous communities. However, parts of Alaska are warming at roughly twice as rate as the rest of the planet, making it crucial to maintain the Tongass ecosystem. The Women's Earth and Climate Action Network, Indigenous Women Tongass Delegation, have gathered in Washington, D.C. to advocate for the protection of over 9 million acres of Alaska's rainforest. A second circular action plan following the 2015 plan is expected from the European Commission soon. This will aim for Europe to cut carbon emissions to net zero by 2050 and can bridge half the gap towards the 1.5 degrees Celsius target. Currently, only 12% of materials re-enter the economy through recycling and reuse. The EU Council of Ministers have demanded more measures to encourage recycling and the reuse of batteries and plastics, and to an extent, eco-design principles to electronic goods. Nevertheless, officials are aware that the proposal could face resistance from member states upon reaching the EU Council of Ministers.